Hey guys, so at the end of the stream last night, Missy and I kind of got into it over autism and ADHD and the positions of more conservative versus more progressive factions on these types of disorders, and I feel like I didn't do a very good job of expressing my position. Um, so I just wanted to take a minute and clarify what I was trying to say. So it all started when Muggs said something about conservatives will deny, brain chemistry imbalances that cause these types of disorders. And I agreed in passing. I didn't really think that this was a super controversial subject. And Missy objected and wanted names and names and names and, who said it, where, when, how. And I gave a couple of examples of GOP lawmakers that I knew about. And then I talked about Glenn Beck and since he has ADD, he talks about ADHD being a superpower. So I feel like I didn't express this well enough because I think me and Missy left on a pretty, not understanding note. And here's the reason I said what I said. For a long time, it was a overwhelmingly conservative faction that talked about vaccines giving people autism. They were like, this isn't a real disorder. This is a side effect from a vaccine. The zeitgeist among conservative parents, as far as I've seen, is essentially, very often your kid doesn't have ADHD, your kid is a bad kid. And I run into that constantly when you talk to practitioners, when you talk to early intervention specialists. Look, in red states, much more than blue states, the Medicare and Medicaid early intervention services through the IDEA Act are very underfunded. They're terrible. This is what I did my master's degree research on. And just looking at the early intervention services, specifically physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and how they are funded, where they are good, where they're bad, where they're lacking, what needs to be done to make them better, how we can advocate for better early intervention services for young children. And so this is a subject I'm very familiar with. And in red states, the services aren't really there when it comes to early intervention. There's a couple of states, surprisingly Arkansas, red state, that's very good about this. But overall, the general trend is that the more red states has worse early intervention services. And when you go to these states and you talk to these people and you talk to the practitioners that work in these states, the people don't see a need because they don't think that these disabilities are actually disabilities. Like, this kid has a behavior problem. It's like, no, the kid has ADHD. And that's a big difference. Now, I know that Missy has said that she has ADD in the past. I have ADHD. So I'm not sitting here demeaning the way that she thinks about, her own condition, because I wouldn't want somebody to do that to me. But I think that at least as far as I can tell, so in my estimation, conservatives are much more likely, or people with a conservative bent are much more likely to have this attitude that ADHD maybe isn't really a thing, autism maybe isn't really a thing, that's just a kid with an attitude problem. And trust me when I say I've seen this countless numbers of times, right? And then finally getting to that Glenn Beck, ADD is my superpower thing. I hate when people say that. Like, I understand it's not my place to tell you how you perceive your own condition. So if Glenn Beck wants to describe that way, that's fine. He can say whatever he wants, freedom of speech, right? I think that it's kind of hurtful and irresponsible to other people and families who struggle so much with a kid who has autism or ADHD. That generalization of like, hey, I did it, so you can do it too. It's the same thing as like pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? So some people are in a situation where that's just not possible. And the same goes for this type of a disability. Some people are just in a place where like the autism or the ASD is just it's too high on the spectrum for them to function. Or the ADHD, like they need medication or they need therapy or they need something before they're able to start addressing that problem. So I just wanted to put that out there. That's the position. I didn't really get to it last night, especially as it was toward the end of the live stream. Look, this isn't me sitting here saying that if you're on the right, then you don't value, kids, and you don't treat disabilities seriously. This isn't anything like that. I'm just pointing out the fact that it does seem that people who are on the right, people who are conservative, tend to have a lot more trouble with accepting certain types of disabilities, and it bears it out with the people that they elect, like the two politicians that I brought up last night, or the policies that are enacted in red states. It's an area to do better. And again, I'm not a conservative or a liberal. I'm very squarely in the middle, and so I feel like it's my job to point out, like, look, you could do this better, and you could do this better. Just like the people on the left are perfectly happy to go nuts, and I should say, now I've got to be careful with my language, because I assumed that people understood what I meant, but apparently not. So some people on the left are perfectly willing to espouse children getting gender reassignment surgery or being put on hormones. In the same way, people on the right often don't take mental health situations as seriously as they could. There's been a big push on the mental health front from the right with the Second Amendment stuff, because they're like, oh my God, we need to make sure that it's understood that mental health conditions can cause these mass shootings and things like that. Like, they're finally starting to understand. This is shown them, because we know that the gun doesn't cause the issue. It's the mental health of the person that's causing that issue. So I think conservatives are finally coming around to that. But in the past, and I don't think it's deniable that conservatives have had this issue. So that's all I was trying to say. Let me know your thoughts, and I will see you on Friday on the next live stream.